Fine. So we are in the final chapter, so to speak, of Regain Your Connection webinar, where we have discussed the general aspects of this connection from a psychological point of view, from a relational point of view, and at the same time, we have seen how that has a deep impact in our uh, brain pathway connection, in our synapses, and that it's an important aspect that we have related these neuropsychological studies with Buddhism, as it is often emphasized how a deep connection to all sentient beings and the deep connection that classical Buddhist texts speak of, the connection to the mother and our dependency, and how important is compassion and a selfless love in order to basically attain happiness and be able to gain autonomy or independence. So we have touched upon all these aspects from the, as I said before, neurological point of view. And as is important, we will be touching upon certain aspects of Buddhist psychology, as we have already mentioned before. Let me just adapt the computer. Let me just, there we go. So we have, as a brief synthesis, we have underscored the importance of connection, how love is important in order to develop our basic human traits, the dialogic fracture. Once we are deeply disconnected, once we don't have a basic sense of humanity, as psychologists sometimes say, the loving a contemplation, the loving eyes upon kids, then we start fracturing our self-identity, our self-perception. And because of humans, as we have spoken before, have a basic, a dialogic structure of subject and object. And even if we are focused on ourselves, there is always a subject and object, a reference, in the sense of, as we exemplified, for example, if we were sexually abused or we were violently abused, not only do we feel the pain caused by others, but at the same time, we will have a dialogic structure which says, you aren't worth it. You provoked this sexual or violent abuse, or you basically are guilty of that which happened to you, or you develop a sense of shame or guilt. And that's somehow that we have already underpinned in the basic, let's say, structure of human beings first need belonging in order to connect to themselves. And we spoke about the studies from Antonio Damasio, at the same time, Daniel J. Siegel, on how important are the connection and the love we receive even from our mother's womb, even from that time and until the age of 2 or 3 years old, where we have this um, sense of belonging, sense of being worth. As sometimes it is said, I feel you seeing or feeling me. And that's what a kid does. I feel you not loving me, for example. I feel you abusing me, or I feel you wishing me well, feeding me, taking care of my needs, giving me a hug or the warmth that I need, that I didn't even know I needed it, but you were there. So you start creating a feeling of the world feeling you. And that feeling of that world which you meet is what will become your dialogical structure, whether you belong to yourself or not. As Gabor Mate, this Canadian psychiatrist, reports of one of his patients, which said the first moment that she um, took heroin, she said that she felt a warm hug from her mother, which never expressed love to her. And then we need to understand what heroin does. Heroin, it activates one of the neuroreceptors, which we have called endorphins. Endor comes from endogenous and morphines, endogenous pleasure neuroreceptors. So it is interesting how this patient injected heroin and suddenly felt loved and cared for, something which out of heroin felt terrible about herself. So that's an interesting part of how, as Buddhism underpins, we belong to others and others belong to us in a dialogical, symbolical, and representational structure. And as we have said, that first stage, crucial first stage, then leads to becoming a self-reliant, becoming a stable, becoming a basically dignified and good human being, able to also encompass or embrace others. Once we have a deep sense of belonging, then we can become a basic functional human beings. But as we are born into a pre-traumatized mandala, a pre-traumatized emotional, we could even say uh, psychological, financial, uh, professional, medical, in all aspects, historical structure, we are born into a pre-traumatized family structure, and we think that is normal. We think it's normal to be sexually abused or have a high substance consumption at home, or to be um, separated and isolated and have a sense of guilt and shame and abandonment. So that's something we already put the case in order to discuss this connection. And that, that image is actually quite telling, because it is a broken mirror where we try to see ourselves from different pieces. In that understanding, last session, we also talked about a basic introduction to Buddhist psychology. And there we discussed how we have two aspects of mind according to Buddhist psychology. The first aspect is called chitta in Sanskrit, or sem in Tibetan, which we could be translating it as awareness, to be aware of something. That's a more than a person, or more than a more than an entity. it speaks more of an activity, speaks more of an action of being aware, not a being which is aware. The other aspect of mind is a dynamic aspect. This is which is called in Sanskrit chaita, or sometimes it's called in Sanskrit samskara. Chaita means a dynamic aspect which comes from the aware aspect. Samskara means mental formations, mental activities, and that those two aspects of mind always we carry within ourselves. For example, if we are angry, we have the feeling of anger, which is chaita, the dynamic aspect. And on the other hand, we have chitta, shepa in Tibetan, or sem, which is called the aware aspect. So we are angry, and at the same time, we are aware that we are angry or hungry or depressed or suicidal or euphoric or happy or stable, whichever it is, whichever emotion or feeling, we always carry within ourselves chitta and chaita, which is called in Tibetan sem and semlechungwa. The aware aspect and that which is born from the aware aspect. And this is where we develop our personality, our habits, our self of identity. Now, what is important is that as human beings that we have discussed, we could develop a stable and more or less cohesive sense of self, or divided, self-loathing, self-aggressive, self-denying, guilty, ashamed of. And that's what brings us to that reflection, which we called cognitive and emotional isolation. Usually emotions, according to Buddhist psychology, have to do, as we said, with a construction of a dialogue, even if it's within ourselves. As Jacques Derrida, the deconstructionist, used to say in a book, the monologue of the other. We all the time have a monologue of the world. We all the time, instead of a dialogue, we are constructing the symbolic and basic communication with the world, where a paranoid person will always see the world as dangerous and let's say and conspirational world, or whichever way it is. A person who is angry or suspicious of others will always look for the wrong thing or the suspicious thing or the false angle of reality. And that is because we, as we relate to others, we basically are relating to ourselves. And that's an important feature of Buddhist psychology, and of course, many other theories. Shadow and projection. As we feel pain, as we can't deal with certain situations, particularly in childhood, we disguise pain, we numb pain, and we basically, as Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, used to say, the shadow is something which we can't work with. And as we have this coping mechanism of pain, that we numb it, that we freeze, that we run away from pain, usually we keep these states of mind, as Buddhism calls that, karmic seeds, which are stored in our deep consciousness, which we don't have time to go through it right now, the so-called alaya, or stored consciousness. And those mental impressions are ready to sprout, are ready to come up once the conditions arise. And something which we understand as trauma or as we understand as shadow is that it is trapped energy. And that trapped energy, which we can also call karma, right? Interaction. Once we have the proper conditions, such as a uh, warmth and damp, uh, arriving at a seed or pouring into a seed, immediately those seeds which were stored will sprout and then will start growing. In the same way, our karmic seeds, once the conditions are there, then all kinds of new experiences may arise. Now, the question is that many of those experiences are painful. We're a coping mechanism from childhood. And once that happens, then we tend to suffer. Could be in the manifestation of disease or manifestation of a chaotic world. Once we discovered that subconsciously or unconsciously, we chose careers, friends, partners, ways of life, personalities. And once we know that this coping mechanism, we haven't dealt with it, then we discover projection. I will try to give an example of projection. Um, Imagine we felt in our unconscious and our deep uh, cellular memory that we were not lovable kids, that we were not expected kids, that they didn't have time for us. So this sense of an abandonment, that sense of worthlessness, as we grow up and we have this strong sense of not being worth it, can translate easily in a workaholic. You know, if you don't appreciate me, then you will need me as I work so much and I won't even sleep and I won't even complain about the um, uh, extra hours that I work because I want to be seen, or I want to be rich and famous, or I want to, have a PhD because probably I feel that I'm not as clever or appreciated than I could probably feel. And probably one of the best examples of that is the showbiz. Is just, the incredible world of artists, actors, actresses, movie like filmmakers, film actors, singers like rock stars or music stars, whichever way it is. You can see how like famous and perfect and they choose their partners. And once their scandals emerge, even like sports stars, which, just by playing one game, they make $20 million with sponsors and, incredibly overrated contracts and whatever. So you see that how their subconscious makes them squander all that money, have dysfunctional relationships, be suicidal, be substance abuse people, and um, is what Debbie Ford, the psychologist, she already passed away, wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. The dark side of those which look for the light, look for fame and money and, and all the um, apparently good and desirable experiences of human life, not so much as a sense of becoming, but as a sense of compensating. So as we discuss that, then again, we touched upon pain in me, pain in others. As we point out the pain, as we fight and struggle outside for people to understand us, as we go into our fifth marriage, as we again give a chance to Tinder, or um, um, a new job, or a new deal in our lives, or a new psychotherapist, we understand that we basically need to work with ourselves in order to work out with that pain. Now, this last session is not so much to speak about the cause and about the different reflections or the different thoughts that we already had, but basically to work with basic strategies, basic tools, basic methods to start working with healing. And as we say, to heal doesn't work directly only with an intellectual, abstract way, but we need to also go deep into our limbic system. Our limbic emotional system is not only to basically have emotions, but also important memory areas are in the limbic system. And that is to say that, as we already expressed from the Buddhist point of view, memory plays a deep role in our projection of personality and our world's outlook. So if we basically, even though we might not remember some sexual abuse scandals in the American Olympic team emerged a few months ago, young, at that time, female athletes that suddenly said, well, I was abused and I didn't even remember. And now I recall, and now I understand why I feel terrible about myself, or I had some trouble with relating sexually to others, or I had some trouble with my body. Once they realized, even though their intellectual or factual memory went away, their emotional memory was there. So unless we deal with that, unless we try to reprogram our habitual mind, that trauma can remain darkened, as we said already, in the shadow. So one of the tools that Buddhism works with, and sometimes it sounds very religious, are the steps of karma purification. I won't go through it as a typical Buddhist lecture on how to purify karma, and most people, when they listen to that, they say, wow, it's magical. But it's actually a deep psychological strategy. It has a deep cognitive meaning. As we are told, in order to purify karma, you need like 4 stages. And the first one is called the gyubitop, the power of remorse, repentance, of acknowledgement. Nowadays, you can use a new word, which I like a lot, ownership. When you own your experiences. Once you own it, it's not a matter of, I'm the worst person, remorse, contrition, and all those religious and somehow pre-modern terms. But once you own your pain, once you own your mistakes, once you're able to face something which you remember, or at least you feel which is not right, you don't need to remember it perfectly. But for example, if you touch upon pain, or if you touch upon an obstacle, as a Buddhist approach, is that the power of ownership, or the power of responsibility, as we said, is that you acknowledge that you are not, let's say, happy, or you are not fully developed, or you have depression, or you have anger or spite, resentment. Having said that, you could also remember some actions which you might have not acted well or spoken well, or maybe you were not so honest at certain moment, or you were not as fair, and then you own that, you acknowledge, you come face to face with that, and that's a first really important stage. The second one, it is called the power of reliance, tengitop in Tibetan. The power of reliance, the second stage, is that which Benjamin Sanders, um, the former director of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra, when he teaches kids, he says, now you imagine the second version of yourself, that which is called the higher self, your guiding star. You have to focus on an image of yourself fully developed, fully functional, fully dignified, healthy, whichever way it is. In the Buddhist tradition, they say you have to rely on the three roots, Guru, Deva, Dakini, or three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, whichever way it is. As it turns out, those so-called three jewels or three roots are the basic, fully developed traits of body, speech, and mind, the fully developed traits of your own mind and its own qualities. They might have these iconographies of big, Buddhas and arms and eyes and objects and gurus, whatever it is, but it's basically a symbolic approach. Third, the power of promise, the power of determination. And the power of promise has to do with commit yourself not to, first of all, abandon yourself into, again, doing those actions, or again, becoming addicted, or becoming abusive, or repeating that action. And the power of commitment is really important because it gives you a sense of reliance in yourself, gives you a sense of commitment. And the fourth is the power of purification. And in the Buddhist approach, you can repeat mantras, you can read sutras or texts, you can build stupas, you can do actions which are opposite to the negative action. And there are a bunch of good things where or which you could work with. But the approach here is that in order to work with your pain, with your deep karma, subconscious material, you need to own, you need to become responsible, you need to work with it. Having said all that, we will now, as was promised, we will be focusing on certain meditation tools, certain methods. And first of all, we will be working with indirect methods that work with breathing, with energy, as we have already worked with. And the first approach, the first method that we will focus with has to do with breathing and has to do with certain visualization. We have to create an image of, what I'm going to say next. Manifest or imagine a triangle, first of your navel area and then around you. As a preamble, we have to focus on our breath, right? We will start doing the so-called vase breathing, as we have explained in the previous seminars, right? Where we put the tip of our thumbs in the base of our ring finger, close our fists, and then we will start breathing, the base breathing, where we take air, we expand our belly, and as we breathe out, we contract it. We expand, contract. With the hand gesture, as you hear the signal, you don't need to clap. You breathe and you will hold the air. And as you hold the air, you will visualize that triangle. First of all, I'll show the image. That triangle, you don't need to focus on the Ram Tibetan syllable, which means fire. And in this case, you can imagine at the navel area, there we go. You have the Ram at the navel area, there outside, surrounded by fire. Now it is at the navel area. It's a pyramid. It's not, it's a 3D triangle, right? And it is made out of fire. And that fire, according to this method, is the wisdom fire, is what has to do with clarity, luminosity, the fire able to burn limitations, to burn blockages, disease, disturbing emotions, negative, stored karma, and so on. This time you don't need to focus on the channels or, that we practice as we are studying the diplomatures or the certifications, in Centro Himalayan Center. We have this comprehensive study plan. We start with Buddhist psychology, then Tibetan studies on death, based on the Tibetan Book of the Death and Tantra and Dzogchen teachings. And we can then go on to practice mindfulness according to the 9 vehicles, the 9 levels, the 9 methods which Buddhism propounds or explains. And then we can go into a 3-year teaching and practice of Tantra and Dzogchen, where different teachers come and give transmissions and retreats and so on. And we also have a weekly seminar on different studies. Now, this simplified approach is very useful. Please don't fall into the Tibetan fear-mongering. Oh, no, you should get the Abhishek and you should be 20 years a slave in a monastery and then you can get the teaching. Otherwise, you will be confused and so on. Anyway, I won't go on with it. But just what I want to say is that it's absolutely safe. It is absolutely useful to do these practices. So as I said, we start with the base breathing. Once we hear the clap, we hold the breath between our throat and below our belly. We create this pressure. We close our lower openings. We don't need to do that. I'm just showing where we exert some pressure like that or like that. Doesn't matter. What is important is to have the tip of our thumbs, as already explained. So as we hold the air, then we imagine this pyramid, this triangle, fire triangle. You don't need to visualize the Ram syllable, but sometimes you could imagine in your mind the sound Ram, Ram, or the sound of fire, which is there, which, as I said, burns limitations, subconscious material, disturbing emotions, fears, even disease, as is symbolically represented. And we hold as long as we can. as we need to breathe out to let the air go, we exhale, we breathe out through our nostrils, and then again, we breathe in, hold the air again, and we will imagine now that we are inside this triangle, that we are inside this pyramid of wisdom fire. And obviously, it's not burning us, it's just bringing out all the clarity, dispelling all the confusion, all the limitations, blockages, transgressions, as sometimes Tibetans mention. Um, you focus on that for a while, and as you exhale, as you let the air go, again through the nostrils, you can still breathe normally and imagine you being inside this tent of fire, this triangle. Sometimes you could, and we will do sometimes the recitation of the syllable Ram. Feel protected, feel warmth, feel contained. That also has a deep impact as we visualize and hold the air. And that will be the first exercise. We will then focus on other exercises. We have a session, with a lot of meditations. Oops. A lot of practices. So we will try to be as focused as possible. So again, if there is any question, you can always ask, you can always write it down. I'll try to be aware of whatever you're writing there. So we will start with this initial practice, right? I hope it's everything clear. Remember, the triangle is like full of fire, and that fire is not only like reddish, yellowish, but it's multicolored. It's the symbol of the wisdoms, the so-called five wisdoms, which we aren't going into it. It's just basically an expression of basic mind's sanity. Okay, so we start with it. We begin with a base breathing. As we hold the air, we visualize the triangle at the base of our navel made out of fire. We don't need a clear image if we trust in the fact that it is there, naturally arises. We hold the air, and as we need to exhale to let the air go through our nostrils, we make a pause. We don't hold the air again, and we breathe normally as we feel that triangle, the fire of wisdom below in our navel area, burning everything that is limiting, that is negative, self-sabotaging, Again, we will hold our breath and we will focus on the triangle in the navel area for the sake of clarity and experience. So again, we breathe in, hold it, and visualize. Now we'll breathe in again, hold the air, and now we'll be inside this fire, wisdom fire tent, which again, it is burning, again, is transforming all limitation, all interference, all limiting perception or cognition of the world, all negative provocations, dysfunctional relationships, uh, basically are transformed. Obviously, we don't use this fire in order to uh, express anger or resentment. Basically, it's wisdom, joy, and understanding. So we focus again, breathe in, hold the air, and we focus on this. We maintain the visualization. Hear the sound of the fire, the wisdom fire that heals us from the inside out. Again, we will hold the air and intensify our visualization and our mindful attention. Again, we focus, breathe in, and hold. We continue the visualization. And as we focus on being inside this triangle tent, pyramidal tent of fire, wisdom fire, we briefly, as we focus, repeat the vibration of the syllable Ram, and we get rid of limitations and obstacles, conscious or unconscious, external or internal. So we focused on the vibration and the visualization. Ram. Again, Ram. And the last time. Ram. Then gradually we come out of the meditation, start opening our eyes. These methods work out with vibration, with visualization, with the ability to hold the breath, and according to the so-called Zogrim systems, um, you can purify a lot of a energy, subconscious material, which at this level, Buddhist Tantra talks about energy channels, energy winds, and vital drops, which again, I'm sorry, we don't have time to go through it. Nadi, prana, bindu, tsa, lung, tikle in Tibetan. But again, there is a deep and rich, let's say, um, array of methods or approaches in Buddhism, which sometimes work as a psychology, as a cognitive theory, as a practice to work with energy, but always there has to be a consistent, congruent method with the understanding of what we are doing. It's not only just basically magic and ritual, which many people just focuses on it, or on a codependence in an institution, or worse than that, a fanatic approach to gurus, or religious externalized behaviors, which again, you could be a century-long Buddhist acolyte, and at the same time be a deeply disconnected human being with probably need of a hug or attention, or basically more meaning into your life. But anyway, let's focus on our meditations. Then the second part, we will do the so-called Vakra breathing. And the idea behind this is that we imagine our body being completely transparent, as a light bulb, right? One of those old bulbs, right? That they were like made out of glass, and they had this yellow light. So we imagine not in that shape, but just that's just like the idea of transparent and probably luminous. Um, and as we imagine like this, we will start focusing, and probably I have an image in here. There we go. I hope it's as clear. Um, Probably not completely, but then the upper part is the head, then the second circle is the throat, and then the third down below is like the heart center, then again goes below. But then the most important thing are the three centers: body, speech, mind, which usually the body area or center as a, let's say, hub of coordination for the body is the forehead or the head area. The color is white. The throat area has to do with speech or voice, but in Tantra has to do with energy, It's not only like voice as in speaking, but it has to also do with the paradigms, the belief systems, the narrative, as we imagine ourselves in a world with a personality and a sense of self and other. That also has to do with speech, with the energy of constructing reality as a belief system. And then again, mind focused on the chest area, that which is called the heart chakra, not where the heart is, but in the middle. There, the color is blue and has to do with awareness and its veils. That which obstructs cognition and awakening and so on. Now, so we have white forehead body, red the throat or area for the voice or speech, and mind blue color in the heart area having to do with mind, body, voice, mind, or body, energy, mind. So this is related to breathing. As we breathe in, has to do with white light, body. As we hold briefly our breath, has to do with speech and energy, red color, and as we breathe out, has to do with mind, blue color. So for a short while, we will be focusing on imagining ourselves as this like light bulb. And as we breathe in, our whole body becomes white. As we hold briefly our breath, our whole body becomes luminous red. And as we breathe out, becomes deep blue, luminous blue, alternating, breathing white, holding red, breathing out blue. So that has to do with breathing in body, holding energy, breathing out mind. This is called the Vakra or inseparable, indestructible breathing because it connects us to our innate, awakened, or deeply functional nature. So we will start with it and then we will be using some syllables, but I don't want to fill you up with a lot of information. We just focus right now with breathing in white light, holding red light, exhaling, breathing out blue light. So again, we on comfortable, we can sit on a chair or on a meditation cushion. We just sit down, our spine, our back straight, our elbows ideally like open, not like, curved, or we just sit down comfortably, eyes closed. We imagine our body to be transparent and luminous. As we breathe in, our whole body becomes white, dissolves disease, blockages in our body. As we hold our breath, our speech and energy center transforms. And as we exhale, our body becomes luminous blue, dissolving minds, veils, limitations. We try to breathe as normal as we can, breathing wide, holding briefly red, exhaling blue. Breathing white, holding red, breathing out blue. We don't intellectualize, we just focus on the luminous, radiant light inside and outside our bodies as we breathe normally. It is as if our 50 trillion cells become white as we breathe in, red as we hold briefly, and blue as we breathe out. All anguish and anger, all mental fixation or obsession dissolves into those radiant lights, white in, red hold, blue out. As we relax and keep on meditating, focused on our breath, we will now focus on our body as transparent, clear as we can. And as we repeat and recite together the Om syllable, our body becomes white, radiant from the inside, and then radiates out. We no longer follow the colors along with the breath. We just focus on our transparent body. And as we recite together the Om vibration, we feel the healing energy of the white light dissolving disease, body blockages, and even obstacles outside, such as accidents or bad encounters. So we focused on the vibration and the white light. Now, now again, we will focus on the white light and the syllable but now we will radiate out this light, bringing harmony, health, stability to all of our surroundings, to the whole world. bringing health, bringing harmony into the relational structure of society and of humanity with regards to the world. We focus on this white light which reaches all directions. And now we focus on the red light. And along with the red light, we will sound the vibration of the syllable ah. Ah has to do, as we said, with energy, with voice or speech, with transforming paradigms or belief systems, cognitive structures which might not be useful or even healthy. So as we recite the ah syllable, our body radiates out red light. And first of all, this red light touches every cell, every molecule of our body, transmuting the energy, the blocked energy, the deep unconscious thoughts or belief systems into clarity, into possibility. So we focus red light on the ah syllable. Again, we focus on the red light, on the vibration of the syllable ah. But now, again, this light radiates out, transforms the deep unconscious beliefs of every sentient or living being, which creates suffering to themselves, suffering to the relational structure, to the interactions. So we focus on this red light, which is infinite, which is limitless, and brings harmony, stability, health on that emotional and cognitive level. We focus with and red light. Now we focus on a deep blue light from our heart center, but again radiates onto our whole body, And this blue light is visualized together with the syllable hung, Hung, hung. And this hung vibration has to do with the mind's or cognition veils, that which covers awareness, that which limits the ability of mind of resting in itself, that which brings clarity and a natural sense of belonging and awakening. That state in the Buddhist teachings is called Dharmakaya, the awakened state of reality. So as we focus on the blue light and the hung vibration, we imagine this light brings about awareness of ourselves and of our real nature. We focused. We rest in that feeling, not judging, not analyzing. Again, we focus on the same light and same vibration, but this time the light radiates out to all beings, bringing about an experience of their own mindfulness, their own sanity, their own cognition, their own ability to be awakened. We focus on the light and the vibration. We breathe in deeply. As we breathe out, we relax and slowly come out of this meditation exercise. Gradually open our eyes. So these exercises, you can practice them in the morning or evening or at both times. You can do it, children can practice it, you can practice it. Um, you don't have to do it a short time, you can do it longer. And as you feel, the stability you can create in yourself and you can focus, um, you will see with the breathing exercises and the vibration and the meditation how you can start without the research, without the delving into the past. You can also start working with yourself and you can teach people which might have a hesitation to uh, discuss their own emotional issues or past issues. They can start working without, and it's incredibly useful. Now, as we have to be time savvy, as we said that in this third and final episode, in this final chapter of the Regain Your Connection webinar, we said that we would be focusing on those tools, those methods to exactly regain your connection. So in this case, we call it reprogramming our disconnection, overwriting and overriding our constant cycles of disconnection, of depression or anguish or stress. As the psychiatrist Hans Salye said, the deepest stress is trying to be who you are not. That means that we probably are deeply disconnected, just trying to just be someone else, or trying to not feel our distrust or uncertainty or pain. And that's why we probably become hoarders or hyperactive beings, or excellent workers or excellent professionals, or ideal parents, but again, not connected to ourselves, not happily within ourselves, uh, angry, just trying to be somewhere else and not in the presence, not in the present of yourself. So, this computer. All right. Yeah, just you might see some spelling mistakes. Forgive me for that. You know, it happens also in Spanish. So anyway, acknowledge it. Seems to be right now. I don't know. So we have 4 stages in this method that we're going to be working with. And this method has to do with delving into the past. Now, this method of delving into the past, of touching upon our pain, is a 4-stage method that can bring us a lot of healing energy once we are able to acknowledge instead of running away. Once we are able to own our experience and not running away from it. The Buddha said that there were 2 arrows every time we suffer pain. The first arrow is the one which hurt us. That is called life. And the second arrow is when we try to pull it out desperately in order not to have pain. Running away from our pain is the perfect way of living with it till the end of your days. So instead of running away from pain, if you acquaint with it, if you acknowledge it, if you own it, doesn't mean that you will love your pain or love your trauma. It basically means that you detect your pain, you respect, acknowledge, own it, and you create a sense of equanimity where you don't act against you or act against the world. You simply have to see what is going on, and that's the first stage. Now, the way we will visualize it is something we will talk later. Second, forgive. Forgiveness is not just basically saying, oh, I forgive you, and then you remain angry, or or upset or hurt. Um, the idea behind forgiveness is that you decentralize, you um, stop feeling the belly of the universe, the navel of everything, where the whole world conspires against you, or that everything that happened to you was unfair and was done unjustly. And perhaps it was unjust, perhaps it was not fair, but then again, you are carrying, as the Buddha said in an example, hot stones, which is your resentment, your spite, keeping them in your heart, waiting for that person to turn up in order to throw them, to hurl those stones at them. So in the meantime, you're burning yourself. In the meantime, you are hurting. In the meantime, you are making yourself sick, not only your body, but also your soul. That's why the act of forgiveness has little to do with agreeing upon injustice, agreeing or being part of transgression, abuse, or whatever. Of course, we disagree with that. Not only done to ourselves, but also to others. But we are not talking about saying to a violent person, a sexual abuser, or in general, an unfair human being saying, oh, you're doing great. You know, it wasn't anything. We are not saying that. We are taking it from the psychological level and saying, I am free and I no longer will carry your dysfunctional energy. I will no longer carry your discharged pain on me. And that brings forgiveness to a completely different level. And that's what is intended in this type of meditation. So again, forgiveness has different stages in Buddhism. Forgiveness to ourselves, to yourself, or let's say forgiveness onto ourselves, forgiveness onto reality, and then forgiveness without any reference. But that has to do with a lot of philosophy and so on. But then we first have to forgive ourselves. Then we have to forgive reality. We have to forgive the manifestation of that situation, because that also, that energy structure, if we don't forgive it, we will again carry those hot stones within ourselves. Third, compassion, loving kindness, altruistic mind, bodhicitta mind, as sometimes it's called on the relative level. I won't go into that. Loving kindness has a crucial importance into our process of healing, because as we direct, instead of guilt, instead of shame, of sadly enough, victims of sexual abuse, they live many years, and even after psychological treatment, even after focal groups, even after therapies and healing processes, they sometimes, and it's not because they are silly, it's because they are human as all of us. We are cyclic beings, as Buddhism says, the wheel of samsara, but cyclic beings not only has to do with cyclic existence, previous, future lives, and so on, but has to do with cyclic interactions within our subtle mind structure. So, um, even though we may have worked with certain traumas, we tend to touch upon those states of mind because it's a deeply unconscious reaction to pain. So the way to heal this experience is through loving kindness and compassion. It is through uh, bringing about an altruistic mind, a loving warmth, feeling of containment, a feeling of protection, this warm feeling which connects us to life. So again, now I'm explaining briefly the theory, and we'll be working in one single meditation, all of it, all of these processes. Finally, letting go. And letting go has nothing to do with deleting a program. It's reprogramming. It is overriding a program. But sometimes, let's imagine, because in a computer you can delete a program. However, in our deep unconscious structure, it's, let's use a word, impossible. As long as we are sentient beings, we will be prone to feeling trauma, prone to feeling pain, prone to um, be part of the history of human interaction and particularly our own human development and interactions. So instead of deleting, it is just letting go. It is just not touching upon those programs as a self-reference, as an unconscious response. But we basically will be having, even though we might come to this dynamic again in an unconscious level, uh, we can touch it with loving kindness and compassion, and as we said, forgiveness and ownership, acknowledgement. But then letting go means that we no longer are attached, are holding onto these emotions which make up our shadow, make up our um, dark and painful areas which we don't want to touch upon and at the same time define us. Having said that, um, these methods, which you might think, oh, that's not Buddhism, Buddhism is actually doing giving and taking meditation, Tonglen, and having a Buddha um, uh, expel all your negative karma through a nectar, and you have to recite a 100-syllable mantra, and Buddhism is this and that. Now, as Buddhism, it's a cognitive, not only theory, but also methodology. His Holiness Dalai Lama, as well as great Buddhist teachers, have started already for 30, 40 years discussions with with scientists in general, with psychologists, neuroscientists, sociologists, philanthropists, um, where they are bringing about studies on mindfulness and the effects on the brain. And there was at Stanford University, where Thupten Jinpa, one of Dalai Lama's great translators and also a great teacher in his own right, has developed a mindfulness program also in that prestigious university. And there is one meditation where, it was very interesting for me, which is called the crystal ball. Remember those movies where there is a crystal ball and, uh, the soothsayer or the witch or whoever, is looking at the crystal ball more or less as, nowadays social media does. But anyway, that's something else. That's another discussion. Um, so in this crystal ball, we will visualize, could be like life size, could be the size of a house, could be smaller as a basketball, whatever. We will visualize one experience in the past or a series of experiences of the past which may have caused us pain, trauma, resentment, heartbreak, and could be through, treason or disloyalty or infidelity, or could be a business go wrong or a bad friendship, or whichever it is, or probably absent parents or violent parents, or any other traumatic experience. Does not have to necessarily be from childhood, could be probably a trauma which we may have experienced during this COVID divorce, sorry, or this COVID confinement, or COVID financial collapse, or it could be a few years ago where we were deeply disappointed from someone or from something, whichever way it is. As this crystal ball is a magic crystal ball, then we will visualize this event or this series of experiences. However, we will be outside the crystal ball as we are now visualizing, looking, not entering the crystal ball, but just looking from the outside. And as we look from the outside, we will be just looking at it without reacting, just seeing how we felt or seeing how the experience unfolded. And probably we will feel some physical reaction, probably some pain, or probably our intestines or stomach, or have a headache or back pain. These are just like regular or natural symptoms of stress or anger, where we somatize uh, certain events or certain traumas. So as we experience that, as we see that, we will acknowledge that probable physical sensation in one or more areas in our body, and we will imagine there is light around that physical sensation. Let's say probably the heart or the stomach or the back or the face, or probably we get itchy or whatever. So we feel there is light in that area, and we start breathing in and breathing out through that specific area. Let's say the elbow, right? Without reacting, we start acknowledging first the physical symptom. Then we start looking again and again at this event or chain of events. And as we look at it, we own, we acknowledge, we respect the experience, because we cannot delete it. It's part of our emotional biography. So we start looking at it without judging us, without judging others. We just look at it from, let's say, a recording of the past. And as we feel those physical sensations, we start breathing, not through the nose or lungs or so on, but we imagine, for example, that the elbow breathes in, breathes out, and so on. You keep on looking at this event inside this crystal ball, you're outside. And then we go on to the second stage. I will be guiding the meditation. I just want to explain to you so that we can have a clear understanding on the method. Decentralize or forgive, then we start on the stage of forgiving ourselves. We don't judge ourselves as being naive, as being stupid, as being fool. We just see ourselves as a decent human being with genuine trust, with a basic human dignity, as Trungpa Rinpoche used to say. We just look at the situation and we first forgive ourselves, and then we start, if possible, we again see the actors, see the situations as non-personal, as human beings discharge their pain, expecting that they will get rid of their problems or their own pain, but they actually discharge the pain to others, as Zapatru Rinpoche, in 19th century great Tibetan meditator and scholar, used to say. Certain beings in samsara, in cyclic existence, they have so much pain that they constantly do terrible things to others, expecting to discharge their pain, but that actually doesn't happen. Their pain intensifies, and then again hurt more people and or hurt more beings, and they continue with this type of experience. So if possible, we try to forgive ourselves, the situation, and then we probably, if possible, forgive the actors, forgive the people who were part of this painful situation. Again, we don't do it for them. We don't say, oh, I am making an apology, or I'm saying it's great that you did to me. A way of getting rid of these painful hot stones, this negative energy that was thrown upon us, and we are foolishly carrying it with all the consequences. Finally, not finally, the third stage is compassion. Again, I will be guiding the meditation in the compassive or loving kindness and compassion aspect. And finally, letting go. So we will be doing this through a visualization, through a guided meditation. And I hope, at least the reason, at least the justification, it is as clear as possible. So let me just plug the computer. I just realized it isn't plugged. I don't want to lose, speaking of connection, the wireless connection. Okay. So any question, if you have any question, we can discuss it right now before the exercise. Else, we just go on with the exercise. Okay. So I just want to tell you that it has been a great experience for me to again have this webinar in English. Probably some people can listen to it, if not live, again through the recording, or and you don't have to agree with everything. It doesn't have to be a perfect idea or method or theory, but if something touched any button inside you which can heal, which can benefit, which can change something in a positive way, then obviously it was worth this effort that we put together. You know, you by putting your time, by setting aside some time for this, and you know, creating this program, this webinar, Regain Your Connection. So, anyway, let's start with the meditation. First of all, we focus on our breath without any fear, without any judgment. We try to connect to the present moment through the feeling of having a body, through being aware of the surroundings, probably through the subtle noises, the light in our eyes, even though we may have our eyelids closed, we can be aware of light. All physical sensations, from others to taste to tactile sensations. And as we are calm and focused, we imagine a large crystal ball, and we are standing outside it. And as we look inside, we try to evoke, to bring about an event or chain of events from the past which may have caused us pain or trauma, bewilderment, confusion, hurt, anger, or anguish. And as we look at it, we try to be aware of physical sensations at this moment. As we see inside this crystal ball, and we see ourselves there, whatever physical sensation that we have, we imagine there is light in there, and we start breathing through that or those specific spots inside or outside our body. We keep on focusing on that event inside the crystal ball. We look at it, we acknowledge it, and we respect the fact that such situation occurred, that it is part of our emotional biography. Could be something from the distant past or a recent past. We breathe through those places we feel a physical sensation. We feel and accept to be uncomfortable. And after owning the experience and respecting it, we focus on forgiveness. We are outside a crystal ball and we look inside and we see ourselves in that situation or chain of events. And for a moment, that person, which is us inside that crystal ball, looks at us outside the crystal ball as if we looked ourselves in a mirror. And as we look ourselves in the eyes, we said to that person inside the crystal ball, I forgive you. We say to ourselves, you are enough. You didn't know better. You are complete. It was not your fault. You are worth it. I am with you. I forgive you. You should forgive yourself. Again, if we have a physical sensation, we breathe through that area. And then we bring about loving kindness and compassion. We keep on focused on that person, us, in that event of the past. And now we direct loving kindness. And inside this conflict, this painful event, we say, may you be well, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you be enough, may you develop to your full potential. May your life be meaningful. May you experience joy and happiness. May you find the genuine purpose of life. May you discover your inner richness. And as we direct these wishes to ourselves in that situation, it's as if we protect ourselves, we contain ourselves, we feel with warmth our painful situation or experiences, trusting we will pull through that situation, we will recover from it, we will be strengthened, not weakened. We breathe through that experience. We may feel anguish, sadness, a physical sensation, and we breathe through that area with a luminous spot. That area becomes aware, and we breathe through there, through our hands or throat or heart or back or head, whatever we feel, any physical sensation. And we finally say to ourselves, let go of that pain. Let go of that reflection of you. Let go of that resentment which only hurts you. And now you imagine that inside this crystal ball you are strong and happy, clear. You cannot change the past, but you can certainly reinterpret it. In that imagined situation, you're allowed to have this image of you of the past walk out of the crystal ball, and you may be able to hug and hold yourself with strength, with trust, with warmth, with compassion, with forgiveness, with confidence. You breathe deeply. Accept the feelings, accept the shame, accept the pain, but with a new understanding. Now you have connected to yourself. Now you have connected to your pain. Now that shadow is worked and transformed. Now that shadow is weak and not strong. You have filled your system with light, clarity, and strength, with compassion, with forgiveness. You're allowed to remain in that state of relaxed awareness, of that healing energy, of that connectedness. And as you feel right and as you feel comfortable, you may come out of the meditation and it's done traditionally in Buddhism, you wish that all this healing energy, this clarity attained during this practice and this reflection and this exchange of ideas, may it be of benefit to all living beings passing through, going through painful experiences which become chains, invisible prisons in their lives. May the practice, the merit, the good impressions of these 3 seminars or 3-part seminar be useful to all. We can do that through repeating 3 times the syllable A and just remain in this state of gratitude and generosity to all. Ah, ah, ah. All right. So we'll be folding up, closing this 3-part seminar. First of all, thanking all of you for your interest, and throughout this time in the seminar, we were able to discuss the aspects, the neurophysiological aspects of connection, the importance of dependency on one another, which is a basic Buddhist tenet of interdependence, but not only on building a functional society or a family, but again, the Buddha said that everything was interconnected, and that actually it is proven by science. I suggest you to see a very good talk, TED talk by Tom Chi, a scientist, which proves how astronomically, biologically, even in thought, even in the literally the bottom of our hearts, we are connected to the history of the universe. And you know, he's a great scientist. He makes a great case on proving how everything is connected, and that's you know, a Buddhist main idea that our own happiness, our own connection, it is deeply entrenched in or through connection to others. That's why the idea of all mother sentient beings as limitless as space, creating compassion without exception, working with healthy mental factors and not anger and resentment and let's say jealousy or unfair competition, which usually that brings out a deep disconnection within ourselves in order to disconnect and hurt others. That's actually the word for corruption. Cor from Latin, heart from Latin, sorry, heart, ruption as disrupted, as broken into pieces. Someone corrupted is someone deeply heartbroken. Anyway, those are just a few ideas. We work with the idea of breathing, on the idea of the relationship between our thoughts, our body, and the energy within it. We were able to make a case for loving kindness, discussing also the relationship which works with our brain, the two stages of belonging and becoming. So again, we had a lot of information, meditation, and hopefully not pretending to have spoken about everything or resolving uh, everyone's problem, but at least we created some interest in ourselves, some insight into working with our minds, and underscoring the importance of connecting in a constructive, loving way with one another. It seems there is a question there, or Beatriz, thanks again for these wonderful sessions. They are so refreshing. During the first session, you mentioned that forgiveness should not be understood as perdonar. In Spanish, how would it should be understood then? So again, the wording in English, pardon, is like a presidential pardon or as a judge's pardon. Forgiveness, probably in Spanish, we should use the word disculpar, which means taking away the guilt. Because if we are those people who rely on guilt, oh, he is guilty because of my unhappiness, my dad, my mom, my ex-partner or ex-spouse or whatever. Once we empower others with guilt, you know, then we become chained onto that. So whenever you take away guilt, disculpar, taking away guilt, you become responsible. So probably we should use disculpar and not perdonar, because it has um, an important image in that. Once you say, oh, I've forgiven my dad or my mom, uh, well, you're not morally above your parents. You're not morally above even those who made you wrong. You can take away the guilt. You can take away that bad energy, which we already discussed through this four-stage reprogramming meditation. So probably that's the best approach to it. Anna, I'm glad that you liked it. Thanks a lot to all. We explored a little bit of Buddhist psychology, chitta, chaita, the awareness and the dynamic aspect. And anyway, if you happen to understand Spanish, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 o'clock in the morning, Mexico City time, on Instagram of Centro Himalaya, as we pronounce it. There are free meditations from 8 in the morning till 9. You may follow it. And thanks a lot for your time. And I hope to see you soon in any of our seminars, retreats. If you happen to understand Spanish, you know, in YouTube of Eduardo Herrera Budismo, or in Instagram, sometimes we have videos and some seminars which are free of cost. If you visit centrohimalaya.com, we have some seminars or also diplomatures, year-long diplomatures that you may take on Buddhist psychology, death studies, and so on. So I hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot for everything.